Corruption has been defined differently. Some say that it is the use of public office for private benefit. But a friend of mine, Boima Fanbule, in Liberia, once told me that corruption is a nice name for theft. And he said, let us just call it what it is. It is theft on an industrial scale by people who have been given the honor and privilege of occupying public office. That is what corruption is. And it is a monster which has and continues to ravage the whole world. We know of corrupt regimes in Europe. Italy at one time in Europe used to be infamous for her corrupt leaders and her corruption and the mafia, and I'm not saying that they have disappeared. So that corruption is known to all civilizations. Europe was like that. If you go to the United States of America, there was a time when you had corruption on an industrial scale. And we know that that was something that happened in the 1990s, in the 60s, and continues today. Latin America, we have seen kleptocratic regimes. In the Caribbean, we have seen kleptocratic regimes. In Asia, we have seen corrupt regimes. And I was just thinking about America, and I had forgotten to mention about Alphonse Capone, who was one of the greatest purveyors of corruption and a corrupter of government officials. But I was talking about Asia. If you go to Asia, you'll find very many regimes of that. And in Africa, we tend to talk too much about Africa as if Africa is the home of corruption. No, what you see in Africa in terms of corruption is not grand corruption. Grand corruption exists elsewhere. It is much more visible and possibly much more painful in Africa because its impact is so very evident in all sectors, whether it is in agriculture, whether it's in infrastructure of the public, for public benefit, whether it's in the health sector, in all sectors. That is why the corruption in Africa and Asia particularly is more debilitating and therefore much more publicized and is a dangerous thing. The international community, of course, has many times come out and spoken and declared itself on corruption. The UN Convention Against Corruption, the African Charter Against Corruption, and domestically people have enacted laws in Africa. But let me tell you, like my friend Okonjo Iweala, who is now the head of the WTO and used to be a minister in the Nigerian government, fighting corruption is a dangerous thing. It is a dangerous thing because the politicians don't want corruption to be fought. They speak against it at public fora, but let me tell you, they don't mean what they are saying. I had the honor and privilege of serving as director of an anti-corruption body in Kenya. And I remember many meetings that I held with senior government officials. And I can tell you they were not interested. Not those in government, not those in opposition. I remember at one time during the administration of President Kibaki, I sought and obtained audience with him. And I indicated to President Kibaki that we were going through investigations and almost 10 members of his cabinet were under investigation. And I named them privately, and I still will not name them publicly because of Official Secrets Act. And he told me, Kazi, fanywe too, let the work be done. And I told the president at that time that what we want is for Parliament to grant the anti-corruption body the power to prosecute without going through the office of the Attorney General at that time. And I told the president the reason why I'm asking that the law be amended in this regard was because whenever we send files to the Attorney General, he sends them back to us, ordering us to investigate things that have been investigated. Of course, We tried what we could. I remember attending a meeting chaired by the then Prime Minister when the law was being changed, and I made certain suggestions, and I remember members sitting there retorted, "Do you want us to make laws for angels?" What I'm saying, therefore, is the politicians, not one of them, if there is one, I'm struggling to remember, who actually wants corruption to be fought. And when you go out to fight corruption, they'll fight you. They'll try to create things against you. And I've seen it across the continent of Africa. I saw it with Nuhu Ribadu in Nigeria. I saw it with McCarthy in South Africa. They even disbanded the organization. I've seen it recently in Malawi with the lady who is in charge of anti-corruption, Martha. They don't want you. They try actually to get things so that you yourself can be charged and arrested for corruption. They can amend laws in order to abolish your office. They amended laws in Kenya when on the occasion of the change of the constitution, they amended laws to abolish the offices that we occupied. And I remember, I'm writing my book and it shall come out, those who sat at a room in Kisumu and said, he must be removed. If he is not removed, all of us are going to be in jail. You go and read the Hansard at midnight on the day that they were changing the law to abolish our offices. And yet, at public rallies, in their political manifestos, they claim that they want corruption to be fought. They are not interested. And I want you to look at any one of them. When I was the director of the Anti-Corruption Authority, I wrote to the then Speaker of the National Assembly asking that I want all the wealth declarations of all members of Parliament. He refused to give them to me because I wanted at that time to say, let us have an amnesty so that the thieves can come and they surrender some of their wealth, because prosecution is very difficult, and even the institution that we go to prosecute these cases are themselves, some of them, susceptible to manipulation. Not easy. And the other thing that we forget is that the social acceptance of corruption in Kenya, like most African countries, is also very high. We tolerate and love the corrupt. I remember at one time, we had caused several cabinet ministers to be arrested. One of them, actually, when we said we wanted to arrest him, said that the director of the Anti-Corruption Commission should go to his office. Can you believe it? Of course, we refused, and he came to our office. And you know what he told me? You take me to court very quickly, I'll be acquitted. And you know he was? He was. And I remember some of them whom we caused to be arrested, and as they were coming to the Integrity Center, they had crowds coming to them and saying that we should be killed. And they are saying they are thieves, but our thieves. That is the level of acceptance of corruption in this country. We know individuals who are thieves. They have run down public institutions. And yet on the voting day, they are elected. When they go to churches, they are given front seats and allowed to use the pulpit to talk. When the pastors, some of them see them entering the church, they stop the sermon and hold special prayers for them. Of course, prayers should be said for them, but not the kind of prayer that they are given or that is prayed for them. Social acceptance at all levels, until the day that we morally rearm, we are not in a good space. And I tell you, in this country, one of the most dangerous things to be in Kenya is to be honest. If you are honest, the system works against you. The system can be manipulated against you. And that is why we continue to punch below our weight. Because as I've said elsewhere, and I repeat it here, we have allowed hyenas to take care of goats. And what they do is that they eat those goats. Hyenas will never change their hyenahood. They can only become bad hyenas. Corruption is a cancer. And those of us who choose to speak about and against it, it is dangerous business.